Okay, so here comes half stewardship presentation, tell you where we are, where we're going, and half Bible study, sort of, kind of. So we've got a little bit of everything. So thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for your generosity, as always. Thank you for being invested in the life of this church. All of this is important. So we're going to answer two questions. The first is, where are we? And the second is, where are we going? And I'm going to give you a couple of updates. One is where we are year to date financially, an update on our legacy fund, which we created last year, the year before, and have been working to fund for future ministry, and also an update on the building fund. Those are out of order. And then where are we going? The budget for 2024, and the why and the where for that increase. These are projections for the next year. So, and then finally, of course, the ask. We're going to trademark that, the ask. Here's the good news. Up to this point in the year, we have an $85,000 surplus. And you might say, well, Jake, if we have a $35,000 surplus, why am I giving any money to this church? That's a great question. Let me answer that question. Here, there are a couple of reasons for this surplus, and there are a couple things that it means. So the first reason for this surplus is because we had a really positive response to last year's campaign and last year's big ask of 8%. That was a big one last year, and folks showed up for that, and we're really grateful. We gave Pastor Kelly a severance of 6 months when she left, and that severance ended in March. And we did that because we thought it was the right thing to do, so that she could focus on her health and not be in financial distress. And so we did that. But that meant that we paid her through March, and then since then have essentially had a savings of about $48,000 in savings and of salary and health insurance and all the things that come along with a called installed position. We also have that surplus because we have underspent our budgets in a lot of different ways, and it is also true that we have that surplus because Audrey's position, and maybe some of you do not know this, Audrey's position as a youth director here has been privately funded. That is not coming out of our budget. That was something that someone said, hey, I would really like if we could do this. Is that something we could do? And I said, well, yeah, if we had money for it. And they said, well, let me see if I can put together the money for it. And they did. And so we got an Audrey Webb, and Audrey Webb has been fantastic. She has been with us now since January and will be with us. She is contracted with us through June. We're going to try to keep her through October when she gets married, and then she can spread her wings and fly back to the East Coast where she really wants to be. She's from Virginia. She would like to return to Virginia. That surplus means a couple of things. And this first thing I would like for you not to take for granted. That surplus means that we don't have anxiety in the church about money on a month-to-month basis. I don't know if any of you have ever been a part of a really small church or a church that was really struggling to get by. It takes so much energy to do ministry and do church when there's a constant budget crunch. And so that we have a little bit of buffer is a really nice thing just for all of your leadership. We don't spend a bunch of time talking in session about what fundraiser we're going to do so that we can pay me before the month is out. This is a tremendous blessing. So that's one of the things that our year-to-date surplus means. The other thing that it means is that at the end of the year, if we finish with a surplus, we will fund our legacy fund with those monies, unless there is a special request by the session for some project out of those monies. The rest of it will go into the legacy fund, and the legacy fund is there to continually feed us interest into the future to fund the church's ministry, right? So that's a good thing. If we have a surplus, we get to feed our legacy fund, which will in turn feed our ministry into the future. It also means that we get to move into the forward with a little bit of a backstop, which is not a bad thing. We're taking a little bit of a big swing this year, as you'll see, into 2024, and so it's nice to know that we have that we're not going to be having anxiety if things are a little bit or significantly tighter next year. That is a really nice thing to know. So let me tell you a little bit about that legacy fund. It is currently at $167,000 is invested with the Texas Presbyterian Foundation in their balanced fund. That balanced fund over the past year has had a return of about 10.5%. Their balanced fund is over all of their assets. I think they manage somewhere in the ballpark of $3 to $5 billion over there. So it's not a small deal. And of course, it's the Texas Presbyterian Foundation. There is a Presbyterian foundation, but we're Texas, and we have to have our own thing. So we have a Texas Presbyterian Foundation. It is housed in the same room as our presbytery is, or in the same building as our presbytery is. It's down in Irving, and so they are nearby, and we can talk to them and all of the things. That money is accessible to us. It is not a true endowment. We thought about doing a true endowment where we would give the money to TPF, and they would control it forever, and we would never have access to it. That's what a true endowment fund does. This is not a true endowment fund, but the whole session has to decide that we're going to pull from principal, which is not our intention at any point. This amount is separate from that $85,000, yes, ma'am. And here is just another yearly reminder that this legacy fund is intended mostly for estate gifts and planned giving. So we would love for you to remember the church in your will. We would love for you to consider what it means to plan in some way to leave a gift with the church. You can do that in a number of ways. If you were to call the Texas Presbyterian Foundation or the Presbyterian Foundation, the regular one, that would be fine too. Both of them have plenty of ways to help you work through the logistics of that gift. You can also work with your own estate planning attorney to do that. We would love to just know that you're planning to do that so that we can encourage other folks into that same work. And again, the purpose of this fund is to create money for its use here for ministry at the church. Here's a little building fund update. The building fund has $514,000 in it. Just a reminder of sort of where we're at with that fund. This campaign and all started in 2014. That's when the ball started getting rolling on this, and then we really started in earnest with collecting funds and all, and making pledges. And then I don't know if you remember, but in 2015, everybody left. Marta and David. Marta was the associate pastor here. David was the director of Christian education. They were married, and they took that marriage and those children to Marta's new call, and they were co-pastors, I believe. They took a new call in Eugene, Oregon. Several months later, Frank retired, right? Frank had been here for 15 years. Frank retired. I don't know if any of you have tried outside of this particular thing to raise money without a face to raise that money around. It's really difficult. It's really, really, really difficult. So the church went from a lot of energy and then the loss of a bunch of staff and then into an interim period, which was difficult for everybody for a number of reasons. And so people made their initial pledges, and then I got here, and then the world shut down for a little bit. That was fun. And so we really haven't picked this back up again, in part because it's a big project what we're looking at, and we need to talk about what our current goals are, right? Before we go ahead and charge forward with a building project that we planned almost 10 years ago now, that was based off of goals that we made 35 years ago. So we need a roundup before we do anything. But the point is that what is happening with the building fund money is that it is not being touched. It is in our accounts. It is $514,000. It is safely invested. Yeah. What's that? It is not, and we are going to talk about that soon. I've had several people ask about what that money is doing and how we should be best investing it. And it is not currently invested on its own as something that's going to grow on its own. So we're going to talk about that in the next few finance committee meetings. It's something that's been top of my mind for the past month or so, and so I'm going to bring that up. So that you are completely aware of all of our finances. If you were sitting in a finance meeting or coming to a session meeting, you would look at our balance sheet, and at the end of the day, it says that we have $1.2 million in cash. We are invested in various things, but in cash, not counting our building or our assets in that way. And that sounds like a whole bunch of money, except that you then remove $881,000 of that. Because those are our designated funds. So included in that 1.26 million is our building fund, is our legacy fund, are our various other designated funds in our balance sheet. So money we have put away for things like men's ministry, or the In and Out for Presbyterian women, or we still have an organ fund, and equipment replacement, and building and grounds has sort of an in and out. All of those monies that sort of hang around, not forever. They're not a permanent sort of fund like our legacy fund. They're not even something that's designated for a big project like the building fund, but all of those other little accounts, all of that adds up to about $881,000, which means that we have a backstop of about $384,000 for any number of things. A bad year, renovation of let's just say, an historic chapel that sits on our property maybe. If we wanted to renovate that, that's where we would take that money from, and that's what we did when we did renovate that thing. Or let's say, as happened a couple of years ago, we realized that the north side of our building is all leaking from the outside in whenever it rains this direction, and we have to do something about that. Well, where do you dip in? You dip into your savings account, right? If you're like me, and something happens in my house, you take money out of your savings account. That $384,000 is essentially our unexpected rainy day fund. That's that. So overall, the big top line here is a big time thank you for your faithfulness and for your generosity, for your faithfulness over the years, right? This has been it's a 30-some-odd year old church, and so we're not insanely old, but it means that your efforts to invest in this place, not only with your money, but your energy and your time and your invitations to friends, means all the more, because it hasn't been a ball that's rolling for 150 years. This ball has only been rolling for 30 some odd years. So I'm really, really grateful. And I'm not the only one that's grateful for your support. We have all of these folks who are also grateful for your support. These are your staff, and they are really hard working and diligent folk. They try really hard at their jobs to serve you in all of the ways that make ministry happen around here, and to try to resource your leadership. And so we're all just really, really grateful for the ways that you have provided income for us. But we're not the only ones that are thankful. We also have our hands in all manner of things around the world. We do a lot of local stuff, things, And we have sort of a broad array of the things that we support through the church. We gave just shy, I think, about $48,000 directly to mission. We're trying to move that number up to 10% of our total budget given directly to mission. Our plan, just to keep it in pace with the rest of our increases for next year. You'll see that mission is going to get a sizable bump in the next year. But when you think about the things that we do, you might notice off the top of your head, because, I don't know, maybe you've seen the Kyle's Place kids in the back at the garden. That's great that we can partner with them in that way. They also just need money to keep a roof over the head of homeless teens in our area. We also give money to things like our Daily Bread, though you might know Daily Bread because we go up there twice a month, once for lunch and once for dinner, to serve a meal to homeless folk up there. But they also need money. It takes money to buy the food that we then serve. And so we support them financially. And we've really moved to try to be a local presence. That's why we're doubling down on Kyle's Place and why we're doubling down on our Daily Bread as opposed to going downtown to the Stew Pot. Lots of people know about the Stew Pot. The Stew Pot is a huge organization. Our Daily Bread has got a lot of energy behind it, and it's 20 minutes away, right? Denton is just as much, if not more, our community than Dallas, and it's right here. And they need our support. So we have our hands in those sorts of things for homeless folk. We've also got our hands in family things. So Cumberland Children and Family Services, they just house families and help them get back up on their feet. And again, they are right up the street in Denton. We've also been supporting Presbyterian Children Homes and Services. They do adoption services. I just had lunch with their president and one of their marketing people, and they've really been working more to support families so that kids don't end up needing a foster home, right? And so they're working really hard to sort of shift their focus. So we support them in their work. And then, of course, globally, we've got in both Haiti and in Africa, we've got some partners there, Haiti Reforestation Partnership, and then FAME. And denominationally, we give money regularly to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, who is all over the place. We recently had a collection taken for Maui. And so PDA is already in Maui. We also give somewhere in the ballpark of $20,000 a year to the denomination that gets split between our presbytery, Grace Presbytery, our synod, and the General Assembly. And so we collaborate with all the other churches in our presbytery to give that money so that they can resource churches, right? This church has been through some transition over the past couple of years. We have needed to lean on the presbytery to help, to guide. I mean, just 2 weeks ago, Cheryl Taylor was here as a member of COM to work with our APNC as they start the search for our new associate pastor. She does that not on her own, but as a member of the Commission on Ministry through the presbytery, right? And she is sent there. These are the sorts of things that our dollars there go to help. Yeah, Godwin.
Some of you know this, but if you go to the First Presbyterian Church of Dallas, you see a picture of our church because they launched this. That's part of being a connectional church. As other churches created us, we then support other churches, and that Presbyterian money is very important because it helps a lot.
That's right. We are, churches are so siloed these days that we kind of lose sight of our connectionalism. But it's an important part of who we are. And so we participate in that pretty generously every year. That was $48,600 in 2023 that we gave directly to mission. Our total budget for 2023 was $630,000, and these are the ways that it is broken up. As you can see, a lot of it is people. We resource the church with people and a building, and everything else sort of comes along the way with that, programming costs and these sorts of things. Hold on to your butts. This is what 2024 looks like. $701,900. This is the big number is 8.9. That's an 8.9% increase. Breathe deeply. We're going to be okay. We're going to be all right. I'll tell you why. So here you go. This is where I'm going to show you where these numbers sort of break out, first of all. Personnel is the big growth point for this coming year. And it comes in a couple of different ways. We kicked off a new worship service. I come for free. Julia comes for free because Julia has been paid historically for 2 services and hasn't been doing 2 services since we went into a global pandemic. However, our guitarist and main singer over there does not come for free. And so we are paying, right now we're paying Jennifer Painter to lead that worship service's music. And that means that she leads on Sunday morning, she picks the music, she helps me put the bulletin together, these sorts of things. So she needs to be compensated. Earlier this year also, I don't know if you've noticed that the choir is crushing it at the moment. The choir is crushing it at the moment because we paid a couple more section leaders to come in and to help the choir. Which doesn't mean that they're necessarily carrying the choir, but it means that one loud, confident voice allows everybody else to sing their heart out, right? And to feel more confident in their own abilities. Those section leaders also cost money. So the budget for the whole of next year goes from something like $4,000 on the year to like $15,000 on the year for all of their help for an entire program year. We're going to give a 3% COLA raise for staff, myself excluded. All of your other staff will get a raise into the next year. And also, the associate pastor, we are budgeting more for that associate pastor role than we had been before to try to get a really great candidate. The market is tough right now, as our associate pastor nominating committee is going to find out. I'm on the leadership team for the Commission on Ministry, so we work with churches in transition. I will tell you that it's tough sledding out there to find pastors. Our enrollment at all of our seminaries is down, and it's tough to find somebody quality, and so we're going to have to pay to get them. And so we're going sort of to the top of what we think we need to stretch for. The session has allotted up to a $70,000 salary, which puts that package at somewhere in the ballpark of $104,000 after you bring in all of the extras and pension, which if you are unaware of how my compensation works, of how all of PCUSA minister compensation works, I get a salary, right? And then my total effective salary, which is my salary, my housing allowance, and pretty much all of my extras, anything that I put off into my 403B or the things that I try to shield to tax through my health savings account or spending account for childcare, all of those numbers get wrapped up together. And then the church on top of that pays 39%, which sounds like a big number, 39% to the Board of Pensions for a handful of benefits for me. And that is my health insurance, which is very good. Hopefully it stays that way. They're having some changes here in not 2024, but 2025. And I think they're gonna put the screws to me a little bit. But it's very good health insurance right now. It also is a death and disability benefit for me, right? So I get a lump sum death benefit. And I also have disability insurance through both short-term and long-term through the Board of Pensions. And it also means that I get a pension, which is kind of unheard of these days. So if I was 65 right now, given my current salary level, I think my pension would be somewhere in the ballpark of $38,000 a year, which is not nothing given the state of the world, right? And how nobody has a pension anymore. So that number is big. That top line 39% number is big, but it does a lot of good. And so when we're talking about hiring a new pastor, that $70,000 sounds like a reasonable amount to pay a salary, and then the amount balloons to 104 through benefits, but they're really quality benefits, and it's a meaningful wage. So that's a 3% raise for all of your staff, including a raise for your associate pastor. I stay pat in 2024. Because I don't want one. Everything else is going up. I'm gonna hold off here this year. Actually, I come cheaper to the church next year by about $150. You're welcome, because I am moving about $2,400 more out of my salary and into my 403b. And so that means that we have to pay less Social Security. The church pays 7.65% of my Social Security, which is true for most employees everywhere else in the world, but I'm technically self-employed. It's weird. So the church pays that to me as a reimbursement as though I was another employee, so I don't have to pick up the entire 15%. That's why I got one.
Starters on the benefits, every one of us that has worked for people, that was just paid for. So that's not a special thing the church is doing for you. They would pay for that otherwise. But I'm not really comfortable with you not getting a raise. You're carrying two people's job right now. And I know this is an uncomfortable discussion for you. When I led a non-for-profit, I tried to pull that a few times because I knew we were tight, and the board refused to let me not get a raise. I'm not comfortable with that.
This is my decision. You can talk to the leadership and they can force a raise upon me. How about that? I will put that in your hands. I feel very comfortable not taking one into the next year just because we do have so much other personnel stuff to take care of, and I haven't starved this year, so I'll be okay. But you are free to speak to the personnel committee and the rest of the session about that. Bethany is on the personnel committee, so you can talk to her. All right. So finally, the last thing that is going up in the personnel budget is the youth intern. Like I said, Audrey has come to us by gift of other folk in the church who have privately funded her. I've asked them to cover her through the end of her contract, which is June. And the goal was always, if we could get a youth director in here, it was never for them to private pay the youth director forever, but that the church would take that on eventually. And so this is sort of our holding up that side of the bargain. We can pick her up until October, which is, she has not officially agreed to this. We had 1 or 2 conversations about this. This is not on paper. I'm just really hoping that she decides she wants to stay with us. She likes it here. This is a good church. It's a good office environment. Everything is good. So she wants to stay. It just so happens that she doesn't like Texas. So she wants to leave. Not this church, but it's the Texas weather. That's right. It is hot. Here's another way that the budget is rising next year. We are working again toward that 10% of our total budget going to mission. Now, when everything else goes up, that means that just to keep pace, our mission giving also has to go up. So we're making a 1/10% increase this year on our mission giving from 7.7 to 7.8. But that 7.7 to 7.8, because everything else is going up, means an increase of $8,000. Yes, Larry. We do not have 10% missing giving. We are working toward 10%. Yeah, that was a Freudian slip of the money that I'm stealing somehow. Working toward 10% of missing giving. Yes. No, that's mission giving. So it is seeing a significant upgrade this year, but that's, again, we're working toward that 10% number, but just to keep pace, it's going up pretty significantly. Yes, sir.
Whether you call it missing giving or mission giving, any of the other old timers remember what our goal used to be? 20%.
20%.
We're founded on a 20% goal.
Okay, so we've got a longer way to go than I thought.
Role model was First Fort Worth that was at 50%, and one was even higher. So I hope we can keep pushing that one. I know folks got to step up, but that's important.
I think if we're going to start comparing ourselves to First Fort Worth, we're going to need somebody to let us have about $20 million when they die and then it'll be a lot easier for us to make that 20% if that happens. But yes, I feel very proud of the current amount. Let's go for 20%. Also, let's go ahead and rewind the tape here. Remember, legacy fund, remember us in your will if you have $20 million laying around. And even if you don't, actually. And then the other increase is sort of random stuff, right? Last year, we had a huge increase in our insurance. We haven't yet gotten that bill. We suspect it's going to go up another 10%. That's what we budgeted for. We've got a couple $1,000s extra of building stuff that's going to need done. You know that costs have just increased, generally speaking. We're going to be using that building more, right? That's a couple $1,000s here or there. The deacons, because of the second service, have been working toward making sure there's something sort of in between services. And so, we're talking $1,000 worth of donuts over the year. So like it's little things that people are happy to sort of provide, but we don't want folks to be on the hook for that every time. If they want to be on the hook for that, great. But if you don't, we don't want to presume upon folks' generosity. We want people to be able to give to their sense of comfort, right? And what they've determined in their hearts to give, and to say, hey, could you bring donuts on Sunday morning? We're not going to give you money back even if you need it, is a little much. So little things like that around the budget make the increase of what is about $70,000 for this year. Now, I told you that the total increase year over year is 8.9%, and that is true. But we are in the midst of an associate pastor search, and there is no way that is going to come to fruition before May. So we can budget like it's going to happen in May, which means we need a 5% increase year over year, and we will be fine for real costs coming in 2025 or 2024. So that's an effective budget increase of 4.5% if you take away. And then next year, we will do the same thing over again, and we'll have somewhere in the ballpark of, instead of a 9% increase, we'll have somewhere in the ballpark of a 5% increase would be my guess. So that's the big one. That's the big ask, 5% over what you give already. If you can do more, great, do more. If you can't, I get that too. We each give to our own level and what we are able to do. How can you give? How can you pledge? You can pledge with these paper commitment forms. You can do it online at the stewardship page. Years ago or so. And so we're real grateful for the ways that has been on the uptake, and people's giving has sort of smoothed out a little bit. We used to be a church that had a whole lot more of this, and now we've got a bit of this, which is nicer for everybody that looks at the finances month to month. And so we're grateful for that. So you can make your pledge online as well. You can make your pledge here in the paper. And however you choose to give, I hope that you'll give joyfully. That's how we give. I don't want to put the screws to you. The fact of the matter is that this is a lovely place to be and to worship and to grow together in faith. And none of it really has to happen, right? We choose. We make this happen. Jesus calls us, and then we pick up the charge and we go. And it is joyful to be able to do that together. I hope you feel some sense of responsibility and buy-in for this place. It's yours at the end of the day. Like this is yours. There's nobody else to whom it belongs except for Jesus, and he's given it to you, right? Like you do the work. And so I hope that in all things, not just in your giving, but in your participation in the ministries of this church, that you do feel a sense of pride and ownership in it, because this is the joyful work that we get to do together in the world. And I for one am pleased and blessed to be able to do it here with you. And so we did 30 years a couple of years ago. This is our 30-year picture somebody took with a drone. And so if we just keep at this, we're going to be here for more than the next 30 years. and we'll be taking a 60-year picture over. I'm sure that pond doesn't last another 30 years. I'm going to be honest with you, but we'll be taking another 60-year picture here together.